Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host, Bryan. We got a little bit off and we are a few days behind, so I'm just going to line back up next week on Tuesday to get back on track with our theme. And until then, I'm just going to check out some stuff that I'm interested in, see what goes from there. Today, we're going to be looking at the new Mars Volta. You guys know how I am with this. I have sort of a love-hate relationship with them, and I'm really excited to check out what they have now. So let's dive into this. This is the Mars Volta's Vigil. Interesting atmospheric stuff here in our opening. Okay, interesting.
I know the way he makes you hide, even when the dose is fight or flight, and the orbits wait for a perfect name. Clean out all the whims he left behind, and if you want, I can bury him out by the salt on sea in an empty grave. The past has a way of coming clean. If I didn't know any better, I could have sworn you said there will come a day for his record nailed. It's the one of the weight when it crashed.
What?
All the centrifugal rays are lost, falling and out of place. One day you're gonna see that everybody claimed that you will.
So we have two pads over here.
Because one by one
We have two pads over here, both doing harmony stuff.
claiming all your words were symptoms of deceit. Don't let your tongue slit your throat. And that's what they always said. This is one last chance that you gotta take. It's the one
Interesting. Okay.
when it crushed. All the centrifugal rays
So we do have distortion,
in and out of place.
interesting notes, waving, microtonality, a lot of sound effects rather than musical components in this section. And this is very harmonious though. Ooh, ooh. A lot of more chaotic elements here at the ends. Heavy reverb without much delay, muddying up the sounds. Wow, okay. Interesting way to go about it. Looked like it was doing all the A's and all the B's and all the C's um, in the credit scene right there. Interesting way to do that. Okay, so yeah. Um, just what? So I know that the majority of the Mars Volta tracks I've checked out in the past all come off of one album, and I can't remember what that album's called, but I think I've checked out almost every song off of it, except for possibly Cassandra Gemini. I think that's the song title, and that's actually coming up. It's in the special selection list. I will be getting to that, even though it is 2 minutes longer than I typically utilize for special selections. Usually I have a 30-minute limit there. But I'm giving Mars Volta the first exception. So even though I don't really always enjoy what they do, I do want to let the Mars Volta fans know that I am giving these guys the very first exception I ever have on the song length limit, just because I'm really interested in what this masterpiece of a track is. Anyways, back to this though. So what I was saying though is I've kind of listened to a lot of stuff off of their most, what I understand to be one of their most aggressive albums, and this is the polar opposite of that. What? So this is a pop track with a little bit of grit to it, a little bit of that Mars Volta grit. And see, what's interesting too is that some of the other tracks we've checked out, that's kind of how I've always described them. They are creating this specific kind of music with grit, with avant-garde elements to it. But they at least from my limited exposure to them, which is like 6, 7 tracks now, that tends to be how I think about them. They have a foundation of things that I can neatly compartmentalize into ideas or bands or sounds or genres, and then they overlay otherness on top of that in order to create friction for the listener. At least for me, listening to Mars Volta is an exercise in willpower. How much are you willing to put up with as far as noise and distortion and um, dissonance and dissonant tones and dissonant musical qualities? How much of that are you willing to put up with in order to get the lyrics or to get to those points where it clicks for you or um, whatever. I think that the Mars Volta does have stuff underneath in their music that is worth listening for. But at least for me, the payment I have to pay up front to get to that goodness is always just a bit too steep. So I think this is a really interesting middle ground. What we have here, at least to my ears, is a pop song. Um, Kind of in line with what comes to my head first. I don't know how accurate this is because I've only heard one song and it was a while ago, but the first thing that popped in my head was Perfume Genius. And I don't know why. Again, it just, that's the name that pops up for me, but that's kind of the vibe I get. When we cut off the like 30-second outro and minute or so intro, we have about a 3.5 minute, maybe 3:45 pop rock track. Maybe we could even classify it as indie rock if that makes people more comfortable. I know pop is kind of a bad word for some people. I don't know why. I think pop's a perfectly fine word. It's a fantastic genre, but whatever. Um, and we take this root foundation of indie rock or pop rock with very palatable, cleaner guitar work, a little bit of electric guitar just to give it a bite, but not a lot of distortion. We're not really getting into the rock side of things or the metal side of things. The vocals are very clean, very articulate. They're higher range, which tends to be more popular for a lot of male pop singers. Um, and there's also something about the way that the melodies are written, the vocal melodies, that have a very mainstream flow to them. I think if you played at least the opening 45 seconds or a minute of music before the end of the song starts to kick in, I think a majority of mainstream listeners would find this palatable, which is not a word I often use with the Mars Volta, so I mean that's kind of what's throwing me here. But yeah, this is a very strong indie rock foundation. We had some interesting uh synthesizer sounds there at the opening. We had a digital drum set, I think, was one of the first things I heard, and just some warm pads, if synth pads, if I remember right. Um, and they were present for all of, I don't know, 15 seconds, 20 seconds before they were replaced with our lead guitar and what I think is an acoustic drum kit. And those synth pads kind of got pushed out to the sides where they got to sit as more foundational sounds. They led the chord progression for the guitar to play over and the vocalist to sing over. And this is what leads a majority of the song. And it's also what makes it difficult for me to find any semblance of pattern throughout the track. I couldn't really discern a structure to most of it. I kind of got the gist of a verse, chorus idea from the vocals, but musically, I found it really difficult to find landmarks to place these ideas. Because the chord progression I think was rather similar, if not identical, throughout this entire thing. A lot of our layerings were pretty similar throughout the whole track. It really isn't different except for the parts at the end where we tend to introduce some more dissonant ideas, and we do see them in the middle of the track going into the outro as well. They're just sort of hidden better. Um, but yeah, so we have this core lineup of ideas: the guitar, the drums, the two synths. I didn't hear a bass, and I don't know if that was on me. I don't know if I was overwhelmed from the lack of Mars Voltaness to this. I was just kind of caught off guard, or if there just isn't a bass, or if it just wasn't mixed very highly. I don't know. Something definitely for me on a second time listen, which I think this track needs. I don't know about Mars Volta fans. People who have checked out every album multiple times coming into this track or this album. I don't know if this is album out September 16th. So yeah, this is a brand new song as far as I'm going to assume. Mars Volta fans, where do you sit on this? I don't consider myself a fan, but I've listened to a few tracks now. I kind of get a gist for who the Mars Volta is, and my reaction to this track is not as critical as it typically is, where I'm honing in on every single facet of it, trying to figure out how everything works together, what the purpose is of specific instruments and their lines. Half of this I was thinking, what kind of music is this? And is this the same Mars Volta? And that's not really great place for my mind to be for a critical reaction, but I mean, you guys come here for honest reactions, and that was honestly where my brain was at for a lot of this, unfortunately. I had the rug completely pulled out from under me, and I'm wondering if Mars Volta fans also are in the same boat, where the first listen is, what? And the second listen might be where you actually get to check out some of the musical ideas going on. Um, or I guess another way of putting this is, how often does Mars Volta pull off this pop rock idea? Is this out of character for them? Or have I just not heard enough Mars Volta to understand that this is actually part of their repertoire, and they can pull it out of the bag whenever they want? Um, so, I mean, I'm trying to keep this structured and moving along specific ideas, but I'm all over the place here. Um, I want to dive back to the vocals real quick. Um, I mentioned that there's a palatable mainstream quality to them. And I think it's really interesting because thinking back on other Mars Volta tracks, a lot of the vocal lines do tend to be more mainstreamy. There's not, again, from my limited experience, primarily looking at a single album, it seems to be what people want me to check out. Um, the vocals tend to have a very rock flow of melody to them. So it's not out of place, actually. I think this is probably the most Mars Volta-y thing about this track is the vocals, and that's why I want to bring them up. I want to point them out specifically because while everything else feels new to me, it feels like a metamorphosis of the Mars Volta I know. The sounds, the tones, the timbres are all accurate. Just the notes that are playing sound strange through these voices. The vocals actually do feel right at home. This is definitely the Mars Volta, and as usual, I just want to bring a little bit of praise to the vocals, not just because they are catchy, or because they do have really nice mainstream palatability to them. That actually, as far as the rest of the track being a bit overwhelming and underwhelming simultaneously for me, the vocals hit me exactly, and they helped me stay a bit focused on the track itself because it was a familiar aspect for me. I think it's an interesting decision to go with that, flipping almost everything else upside down. Again, my limited understanding of the band, flipping everything else upside down, but keeping the vocals where they're at. There is a center to this track. There is a very core Mars Volta personality characteristic of the song that even if I didn't know it was the Mars Volta and you presented this to me, I think the vocals would immediately put me in the mind of their vocalist. Off the top of my head, I don't know the vocalist's name, but yeah, I mean, I might even think, oh, is this a side project of the Mars Volta's lead vocalist? It's just very much in that range. One thing I do want to point out before we get off topic or onto another topic is clipping. There are quite a few sections when our vocalist hit the highest point note wise. And they did it a couple of times. I think the second verse had it, and there was a bit at the end where I noticed it as well. But there is clipping, and I don't know if it is a compression thing. I don't know if they just used more air pressure, resulting in more volume to hit the highest notes in their melodies. But there is a moment in, like I said, a couple of times through the track where I can hear the top end of the vocals clipping a bit and losing a bit of their characteristic and flattening out. And I'm curious if that is intentional or not. It makes the vocals go from sounding very clear and concise to sounding like they were recorded through a megaphone just for a split second. And at least to me, it was very distracting. But the Mars Volta and distracting choices kind of go hand in hand. So, I don't know. Mars Volta, I've also been told that this is a group that will, uh, you know, do a track, do a specific section 100 takes just until they get the perfect one. So maybe I'm getting that mixed up with someone else. No, no, that's the Mars Volta. Perfection, right? Tons of control over the music is what I understand about their lead band dude. The guitarist, I think, has a lot of control over things, wants everything to be perfect. So I have to assume that that's intentional, but it really does coincide with the highest points, which is when the vocalist is going to want to be the loudest to hit those notes, which is typically a no go. That's usually a hey, let's back the mic down. It's a little too hot for you singing this section. And either it was missed, which I can't believe so because clipping and flattening out of the characteristics are very easy to see in a visualizer. You see, you're like, oh no, that's not good. We need to redo it. So I can't believe that they missed it. My opinion is that one of two things: either one, they kept it intentionally, or two, they just didn't have time for more takes, which doesn't sound very Mars Volta to me, at least older Mars Volta. Maybe there's some growth to the band and they are allowing more flexibility. Maybe they didn't think anybody would notice it. I don't know. It's very strange though. Um, a very strange occurrence I noticed, and I don't have an answer for it. It doesn't fit with my idea of the Mars Volta at all. Um, Moving on. So I would mentioned that we have all these consonant layers. About the halfway point through the track, we enter into less consonant ideas. We enter into dissonance. We have multiple melodic layers that don't really seem to complement each other very well. We begin to introduce some jazzier, spicier note choices, pulling notes from outside the key, and at least in this case, they're rarer, much rarer than the Mars Volta has used in the past, but they are present and they are quite spicy. There's a lot of dissonance pulling these notes in with the notes that are being played around it and next to it that create these really tense moments. And that's what they are, moments. The notes are kind of played and got off of. It's a very jazzy idea of spicing up your melody lines without introducing too much dissonance, so that that's less palatable for your average listener. You kind of hit the note, get that spice, and get off before the dissonance brings in that warble into the track. Um, and we heard that a couple of times here. Like I said, it wasn't overly used. Definitely not on the level that TMV typically does, but definitely often enough. I'm like, okay, this is the same Mars Volta. We're taking something palatable and grittying it up a little bit. But again, it's odd choices. And this is, I feel like I repeat myself every time I listen to a Mars Volta track, that I really praise underlying parts. And there's just these gritty elements that don't make sense to me. And this is one of them. I'm not going to say that every time they brought in one of these notes, it made sense to me, because it didn't. The first time I was just completely taken off guard, but it was also a blink and you miss it kind of thing, and I was kind of questioning if I even heard it at all. By the second, third, and fourth times that these were utilized, I realized that they were intentional, they were happening, and I wonder if it's a type of maturity of the composer, in that they still want to make, I don't want to say difficult music, because I think that undermines what they're doing, but I think they still want to make music that is less palatable to the mainstream without hitting that full on abrasiveness that they've done in the past. So we still have these ideas of heavy layers that begin to step on each other's toes. We have these notes that don't necessarily mesh well with the notes around them, but these ideas are used more sparingly, almost atmospherically at times. And if you don't understand what's going on, I think it's more difficult to ascertain what they're doing. But I think the sparsity of it all and the lesser degree of abrasion that they're utilizing means that it might be easier for someone to pick up the purpose of these notes more so than in older Mars Volta tracks. And I think that's what a second listen is really going to help me with this track on. Um, because I'm not too sure about these specific notes. However, I am sure about the ending. If you remember, I had mentioned that the ending be added reverb to a few instruments. I think the guitar and the vocals and the drums specifically added reverb, but had a super long tail on them. Basically, had no cutoff, or a very lengthy cutoff, where the vocalist and the guitars, they would get to play a few notes before the first note's reverb died off. So you'd get this heavy layering. Um, and the reverb is quite a bit larger and bigger than the the other notes as it is, and it creates a very muddied, large sound. It becomes a bit wall of soundy, which is an interesting way to end a pop or indie rock track, depending on what kind of indie rock you're making. Specifically, in this case, looking at the first half, though, it's a very clean production. It's a very wide production. Every instrument has its place in the sound sphere. They're all very meticulously EQ'd so that they can all be heard. No one's stepping on each other's toes. There's plenty of space between instruments. Each instrument has a specific role in the music, so we don't have to worry about clashing ideas. It's a very clean, concise mix, and to end the track with such muddiness implies a type of theme to me. There is a degradation of quality, not necessarily in the music. Everything is expertly crafted. I don't want to say that the music ends lower quality than it began, as if the composition faltered in the middle and it just tried to tie it up. No, I'm talking about the thematic concept of quality, where the song is talking about a story that starts out clean and clear cut and ends up a bit muddier. I'm kind of hoping when we get into the lyrics, we might explore some of this because we have these ideas of grittiness punctuating through the track and getting more and more gritty until we get to the end when things are less clear, less easily understood. There's a lot of overlap between concepts, where I had just talked about at the beginning that there's a lot of distance and space between every instrument and their roles. Everything is more clear cut. This transition happens over the entire track, and I'm kind of hoping to hear something like that in the lyrics to find some cohesion there. Um, and I think that's it. I know there was a guitar line, 60% into the song, maybe, that I wanted to talk about, but off the top, I can't even remember what it was doing. I remember it was grittier. We actually got a little bit of a more traditional TMV rock guitar in there, but I couldn't tell you what it was doing or what was going on around it. Again, this song really demands a second listen, especially for the nuance of it all. When we talk about pop music, it's pretty easy to say this is the chorus and this is the hook. They make huge distinctions there. Even when we look at more popular rock stuff, especially stuff in metalcore, I think metalcore is one of the most clear cut examples now, where you have a quiet verse and a loud chorus so that the chorus can have impact, typically has a catchier hook to it so it can get stuck in your head. Both pop and indie rock also tend to utilize these similar structures to set massive diverse elements between their verse and their chorus to accentuate their differences. Here, like I said, I have no idea what the structure was to this. I kind of get some hints through the vocal melodies, but yeah, it's interesting because I think this is where TMV really excels. If you ask me to define this song in a genre, I would say indie rock. I'd say pop rock without even thinking, without even hesitating. That's what I would classify them as. But if you ask me if somebody who enjoys pop rock would enjoy this, I'd give you a hesitant maybe, because it's still Mars Volta and I still kind of have to put them in their own realm. Um, for better or worse. You know, I will I will stand here and continue to uphold this opinion until something changes in me, but Mars Volta is one of those bands that takes something that I can enjoy and find ways to make me not enjoy it. And I think they've done that here. I was on board with them when the song opened, taken off guard, certainly. Not what I was expecting from them, but I was enjoying the music, and by the end of the track, I was kind of iffy on it. And that seems to be their MO, at least in my experience. I'm not saying that everybody has that experience, but every song I've listened to from them, minus one maybe, and I'm only kind of vaguely saying that because I have this idea that I remember hearing a song I enjoyed start to finish, but I can't remember what it was. Might have been a dream where I heard a fake Mars Volta song that was palatable to me. um, but yeah, that's who they are to me. They make music that on paper I should love and find ways to make it super abrasive to my personal taste in music. They've done that here too with pop rock. Um, and it's just sort of really fascinating how they can do that in a way that I think people enjoy it, right? Because I can take the pop rock style and completely pervert it into something nobody would enjoy. I can make it a bad song. As much as I say there are no such thing as bad songs, there's bad music, right? Uh, Maybe a bit more objective bad music. Subjectively, people might still enjoy it, but I could really mess it up. But here, I think they've just taken it as a base and warped it into their own style, and I think they're going to have an audience for it. One, just because Mars Volta fans are going to enjoy it based on the name. Not saying that they don't enjoy it for the music, but it kind of, when you're a big fan of something, it bumps it up a little bit. It kind of gives you a higher initial respect or joy over it. Huge shifts can also have the inverse effect where you believe you should already enjoy it and it doesn't hit quite as hard, but now that that feeling is amplified because you were coming in expecting a 7 to begin with and now you got a 5. Well, if you started with a 5 and you get a 5, you're like, yeah, that was all right. But if you expect a 7 and you get a 5, you're like, yeah, that wasn't that great. Even though it's the same song, right? Expectations are huge. Mind space, or yeah, mental space and mindset are huge. So yeah, I think big fans of Mars Volta are going to enjoy this, and I think that even some people in, you know, who might not know who Mars Volta are, will come into this and find a band that they enjoy. Surprised when they dig into the rest of the discography. um, but yeah, it's just a really weird situation where I can say this is definitely this genre. I don't think people who are fans of this genre would enjoy it though. And I don't know how to classify that other than just being in a genre of their own. Let's dive into some lyrics here and see what's going on. Like I said, I'm kind of hoping for the idea of grittiness going on through here. Yeah, so we have, something I didn't, let me talk about this real quick. I mentioned that it's a 5-minute video and about 3.5 minutes of music. Our intro and outro are interesting in that they're entirely atmospheric. We have just ambient tones and some scratching sounds, and that's kind of it for a very long time. And I found it to be a negative part of this track. Maybe in the perspective of the entire album, it makes more sense to have these moments at the beginning and end. But as a single, I could have easily done without them. I don't think they added anything to the music other than space. It put noise at the beginning and end. But that's just Mars Volta too. So, you know, I don't know. Let me know what you guys think of the intro and outro. Because like I said, I don't really have an opinion on it. I don't think it added anything. But maybe there's some people like, oh no, it connects to this, and you know, especially if you have more information about this upcoming album or the process that went into it, or just the mindset that the crew had when they made it. I'm really curious about all that. So, anyways, we have a verse, chorus, bridge, chorus, outro. Okay, so yeah, typical thing. I didn't feel that. Like I said, I kind of got the verse, chorus idea from the vocal melody and its progression, but musically, I could not find any landmarks to designate this. Verse 1, I know the way he makes you hide, even when the dose is fight or flight, and when the orbit wait for a perfect name, clean out the webs he left behind. And if you want, I can bury him out by the salt of sea in an empty grave. The past has a way of coming clean. Now, I don't know if we're on to anything yet. We definitely have what seems to me, um, uh, and you know, this really could go in a lot of ways, but just based off the first two lines, we have an abusive relationship. I know the way he makes you hide, even when the dose is fight or flight, when your adrenaline kicks in. Um, and he says, if you want, I'll bury him out by the sea in an empty grave, right? So it definitely seems to be that our narrator has a relationship with this other person who is in an abusive relationship. But we have the idea of coming clean. And I already talked about the song getting grittier as time goes on. We have the word clean. I don't know if this means that we have a strong theme here, but I think it's interesting that we already have a word that I was looking for. We'll see where it takes us, though. If I didn't know any better, I could have sworn you had said, there will come a day for his reckoning. It's the weight of the world when it crushed all the centrifugal ways our lives fall in and out of place. Okay. Oh, it's the want of the weight when it crushed all the centrifugal ways our lives fall in and out of place. Hmm. So the weight, typically weight is not personified. It doesn't have wants or desires or needs, but we are personifying it with a want to crush the ways that we naturally live our life, right? everything that our lives revolve around. We get into our routines and stuff like that. The weight wants to crush those routines. That's what the chorus is saying. One day you're going to see that everybody who claimed that you were loved have left, because one by one they would disappear, claiming all the wolves were symptoms of deceit. So, it says, interesting. Is this about the same person? Because the first chorus, or sorry, the first verse was very empathetic to this person. You're in a bad situation. I can see it. If you want, I can help. Right? Verse 2 is very accusatory. One day, everyone that says they loved you are going to leave you because they claim that all your wolves were symptoms of deceit, which means that, all of your predators, everybody who has done bad things to you, were just you. I'm going to assume lying is what they're going on here. Finding a different way to utilize the phrase, crying wolf. The next pre-chorus says, "Don't let your tongue slit your throat." That's what they always said. This one last chance that you've got to take. And then the chorus is the same thing about the weight wanting to crush our all the ways that our lives fall in and out of place, our routines. So I'm going to assume that verse 1 and 2 are about different people or different situations, because our chorus is just about, weight. It is about removing our routines and getting us out of what we feel to be normal or comfortable habitats and environments. The bridge says, "Underneath your doubt laid a serpent's egg, hissing his way out. You were told that severed tongues can't fall into their swords because you're the only voice that calls." Oh, okay. No, 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 no. This is all about one person. So, verse 1 seems to be our narrator getting duped into thinking that that their friend is in danger, that they are in an abusive relationship. Verse 2 is them finding out that they've been deceived. And then our bridge is about their friend falling to the sword. So it says, "You were told that severed tongues can't fall into their swords because you're the only voice that calls." So severed tongues to me is, the split tongue, like a snake, and snakes have always been tied to deception, metaphorically. And so this other person is a deceiver, right? So our narrator got deceived in verse 1, was pretty ticked off about it, and said, "Guess what? Everyone's going to leave you. You're going to be alone," in verse 2. And then the bridge seems to be about this other person, the deceiver, actually getting hurt, getting wounded. It doesn't necessarily have to be physical. It could again be metaphorical, in which case everybody has left them. They're alone. They are now hurt, emotionally, mentally. We do the chorus again. Our outro says, "I'll be with you, say you will. I'll be with you, say you will." I don't know what the outro has to do with anything, but I think I got a gist on this. And so, does this line up with my idea of the music, though? A little bit, maybe. I mean, we can relate it to our narrator's mental state, right? Where in the first verse, it was about being deceived and everything looked clear cut. Oh, I see this person in danger. Oh, they told me that it's this other person. I can help out in a situation if you need be. But verse 2 brings about some deceit to it, right? Things get muddied. The truth is harder to tell. There's now lies mixed into it. And by the end, we have somebody who thinks that they have full control over the situation, that they've deceived so many people and think they're in the clear. And the lies have completely muddied any sort of trust between our narrator and the deceiver, in which case we get this really cluttered ending. Interesting. Those are my thoughts on Mars Volta's Vigil. This is where you guys come in. I think this is probably my favorite Mars Volta track so far. It is not exactly what I want from them. I do think it's interesting they went the pop rock route and they did kind of get away from some of the dissonant elements to it. I think they went a little bit too far, but I still enjoyed it. I would like a Mars Volta in the middle though. Still kind of on that rockier side, playing around with more progressive elements, but just not so much dissonance. But I still enjoyed this, and I'm kind of looking forward to this album. It comes out next month, and I guess I'll add it to my list. No reason not to, right? Best time to jump into a band is when they release an album, so I'll probably check this out on my own time, and I'll let you guys know what I think of it. Hit me up in the comments though. Let me know what you thought of this track. If you're looking forward to this album, if you have any information about this track, the intro, the outro, what Mars Volta did to kind of lighten up. And of course, as I asked earlier, if you're a Mars Volta fan, how do you feel about this new direction? Above the comment box is a description box. In there is a link for Linktree. Take you to this menu right here. Has everything related to the channel. You can pick up some merch, join the Patreon, follow me on Twitter, join the Discord server, and a bunch of other things. Go ahead and check it out. Above that, if you could, like, subscribe, and ring the bell. I greatly appreciate all three of those. All right, that wraps that one up. I will not be. I might be back tomorrow. I don't know. I don't know what my schedule is because it's all up in the air. We'll definitely have Monday videos. Sunday we'll have a live stream for the patrons. That will be up not long after I'm done doing a live stream. I'll try to get it up as fast as I can for everyone else to watch. Otherwise, just subscribe. That's the best way to know, or join the Discord. I have a chat room in there that is I have a bot that posts up new video releases. Those are the two easiest ways to know if I'm releasing anything more today or this weekend. All right, until next time, remember to be critical, not cynical, of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening whenever you choose to watch my videos.